All right, get ready for this one, listener. We're diving deep into, well, kind of a mysterious topic today. What did Jesus do between his death and, coming back to life?
Yeah, it's a question that's kept theologians busy for centuries. Lots of debate there.
I'm super curious about it. Our source material for this deep dive is this online text. It kind of blends together Bible passages, interpretations, and even some devotional stuff.
And it tackles a concept, one with some serious weight. We're talking about what Jesus was doing in the realm of the dead.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff. It all starts with those verses, right? Acts 2.31 and 1 Peter 3.18-20. They mention Jesus not being abandoned, like left behind, in Hades, and even preaching to spirits in prison.
You got it. And those are the verses that lead to this whole harrowing of hell idea.
Yeah.
Picture this, Jesus going down to the depths, like actually confronting the forces of darkness and ultimately winning over them. It's a pretty strong image, right? It shows his victory, like real victory over death.
Okay, I am totally hooked already. But who were these spirits in prison? Like, who are we talking about?
See, that's where things get even more mysterious. The Bible doesn't really spell it out. That's why there are so many different ways to understand it.
Well, our source, it gives us a couple of interesting possibilities. One is that these spirits, they could be those fallen angels from Genesis 6, the ones who disobeyed God and got involved with humans.
Yeah, that's one theory. It ties into like the idea of angels being punished for their rebellion.
And then there's another one. This one really grabbed my attention. The source says maybe these spirits, they were the souls of the people who died in the flood. Back in Noah's time, only Noah and his family made it, remember?
Right. Both of those interpretations, they're trying to make sense of this prison imagery, like suggesting that these spirits, they're in some state of confinement.
So much to think about already. It's like being a detective, a biblical detective. Okay, listener, what do you think? Which of those interpretations clicks with you and why?
Yeah, good question to consider. Even scholars don't have a for sure answer. There's space for faith to work in there, personal reflection.
Absolutely. Okay, so our source then takes us further into this whole Sheol thing. It points to Psalm 16.10, the part where it says, God wouldn't abandon Jesus in Sheol.
That verse is super important for figuring out what's going on here. It really emphasizes that Jesus' time, in the realm of the dead, it wasn't just some random side trip. It was all part of the plan.
Okay. And our source is clear about one thing. Sheol, it's not the same as the Christian idea of hell. It's more like how the Old Testament understands the realm of the dead. Like, everyone went there, good or bad, it didn't matter.
Think of it more like a waiting area, not the final stop.
I like that, a waiting area.
Yeah.
And that leads to this really fascinating point about Jesus being like the first fruits of the resurrection. It's like he blazed the trail, right?
Exactly. So because of that, listener, you can be sure about your own resurrection. It's not just some like vague wish, It's a real promise, and it's based on Jesus's victory.
Wow, that's powerful. Our source even links this to what Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 15.54, where he talks about death being swallowed up in victory.
Yeah, it's like a vivid picture, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then our source goes on to this intriguing idea that maybe Sheol has like different sections, compartments, It brings up that parable of Lazarus and the rich man from Luke chapter 16 to make the point.
It is a fascinating parable. Lazarus, he's comforted while the rich guy is suffering. But you got to remember, parables, they're meant to teach us spiritual truths, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean they're literal descriptions of what the afterlife's actually like.
Good point. But the source, it argues pretty convincingly that this idea of Sheol having different compartments, it was pretty common in Second Temple Judaism. So even if we don't take the parable literally, it does give us some insight into how people back then thought about what happens after death.
Right. That's super important for understanding the context of these passages. We got to step back into their world to really get what they meant.
I'm already seeing things differently. So are we saying that even in Sheol, God's justice is still working?
Now, that is a thought-provoking idea for sure, and one that's definitely worth exploring.
Okay, so we've spent some time in Sheol, but our source, it doesn't stop there. It moves on to Jesus' ascension, and that whole idea of him giving gifts to men, Ephesians 4.8, right?
Right, and here's where things get really fascinating. You see, the source connects this idea of Jesus descending and then ascending to the actual structure of the universe.
Yeah.
Like it quotes Ephesians 4.9 where it says he went down to the lowest parts of the earth.
Wait a minute, lowest parts of the earth. That sounds kind of intense, like something out of Dante's Inferno. Are we talking actual like geography here.
Not really. It's more about a hierarchy, a cosmic one, like a way of understanding different realms, different levels of existence. This was a common idea back then, in ancient times, heaven's the highest realm. And then there are these lower realms that are connected to death and the underworld.
So, okay, when it says Jesus went to the lowest parts, it's like he went to the furthest point away from God, right? Experiencing that total separation that humans face.
That's one way to look at it. It highlights how complete Jesus' experience was. He embraced everything about being human, even death itself.
And then he comes all the way back up, ascends to the highest point, sits at God's right hand. It's a powerful reversal, isn't it? Like he went down into the depths of, I don't know, despair and came out victorious.
Exactly. It shows us the complete victory of Jesus. He didn't just beat death. He went beyond it, transcended it. And now he has ultimate authority.
And it's from that position, with that authority, that he gives these gifts to people. Our source, it compares it to like a king in the Old Testament, returning from a victorious battle and giving spoils of war to his people.
Oh, I love that comparison. If we think about it, what battle did Jesus win? It was the battle against death, against the powers of darkness.
And the spoils he gives, they aren't gold or jewels or anything like that. They're spiritual gifts that empower his followers, almost like a reward, a divine reward for those on his side.
That's it. And those gifts, according to our source, they have a purpose. They're meant to strengthen the church and make it possible for the church to continue what Jesus started, his mission in the world.
So it's not just about what Jesus did then, but what he's still doing now through his followers, right?
Right. The church, it's not just passively receiving salvation from Jesus. It's actively involved in his work of redemption. It's ongoing.
That's a really empowering thought. And it connects to something else the source mentions. It says Jesus' victory over death wasn't just for the people alive back then, but for everyone, past, present, and future. Like a cosmic reset, a new hope for all humanity. But wouldn't that go against what we were talking about earlier with Sheol?
That's a good question. And it shows us how complex these theological ideas really are. We got to remember, the Bible uses different metaphors, different images to talk about spiritual truths. So what we're seeing here is a shift. It goes from the Old Testament idea of Sheol as this holding place for everyone who died to this New Testament emphasis on resurrection, on death being completely defeated.
So it's not about being stuck in some dark underworld forever.
Yeah.
It's about this amazing transformation, this new life that's possible because of Jesus.
Exactly. And our source is clear about this. This isn't just some nice-sounding belief. It affects how we live our lives today.
Right. If we really believe that death has been defeated, well, that changes everything. It gives us hope, even when we're suffering. It gives us the courage to fight for what's right, and it gives us a reason to live lives that reflect the values of God's kingdom.
And that's exactly the challenge the source leaves us with. Let this belief change not just your heart, but your actions, how you live in the world.
So it's not just about escaping this world and going to heaven when we die. It's about bringing heaven here to earth, living out the reality of Jesus' victory every day. That's awesome.
And that's a mission that needs every spiritual gift we can get. Speaking of gifts, listener, keep that in mind because we're about to dive into a really deep passage, 1 Corinthians 15.54. It talks directly about death being defeated and the victory we have because of Christ. And this is where it all ties together.
Yeah, I'm ready for this. Our source calls 1 Corinthians 15.54 like a real turning point, and I gotta know why.
Okay, so it says, death is swallowed up in victory. You know this verse, it's the peak of Paul's whole argument in 1 Corinthians 15. He really lays out the case for resurrection, like piece by piece.
It's not just like a pretty saying or anything.
Oh, definitely not. It's this powerful statement,
Yeah.
It declares that life ultimately wins. Life beats death.
Our source describes it like as this huge shift in the universe, like the old way of things where death always had the final word. It's completely flipped on its head.
Exactly. It's not just about us going to heaven when we die, individually. It's about death itself being defeated. Death doesn't have that same power anymore.
Whoa, that's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It is. And the source, it makes this great connection back to Jesus going down to the realm of the dead.
Yeah.
It's like he went right into enemy territory and took away their weapons, like from the inside.
So it was something he did on purpose, not just something he had to go through.
Yeah, exactly. He actually fought death head on. He conquered it. He freed the people who were held captive there.
And then because he rose from the dead, well, that means we can share in that victory, right? It's not just something we wait for in the future. It's real for us now because of faith.
That's the amazing thing about the gospel. It's not just about escaping this world. It's about a new way to be in the world, We can live with hope, with confidence, because of the resurrection.
I'm starting to see how all of this applies to our everyday lives, you know?
Yeah. Our source even suggests this belief, it should affect how we act, like our morals and ethics. If we truly understand that death has been defeated, well, we should live in a way that shows that victory.
So it's not about being good to earn our salvation, right? It's about living in a way that lines up with this new reality.
Exactly, like fighting for justice,
Yeah.
showing compassion, forgiving people. It's not just random nice stuff. It's how we express that resurrection life that's already in us.
I love that. It's like we're like agents of change, bringing the reality of God's kingdom right here, right now.
That's a great way to put it. And the source wraps things up by saying how important it is to share this good news, tell other people.
It makes sense. It's too big to keep it all to ourselves.
Right. This isn't just about you or me getting saved. It's about this huge shift that affects everyone.
So we're not just called to believe in the resurrection, but to actually live it out. Let it affect every part of our lives.
That's the challenge. It's worth it, though, even when it's hard.
Well, listener, this is it for our deep dive into this really fascinating topic. It makes you think, right? So what will you take away from all this? How will the truth about Jesus' victory over death affect your life today?
Don't forget, the story doesn't end with an empty tomb. The power of the resurrection, it's still going out into the world, and we each have a part to play in how that story unfolds.